From barroom brawls with fellow rock stars to bitter homecoming showdowns and surprising acts of kindness, these tales show Janis in all her rebel glory. Stick around because the number one myth is an absolute shocker that set Janis on the road to immortality. Number 12, she was secretly engaged before she died. Janis Joplin was about to settle down and get married. It sounds unbelievable for the free-spirited rock queen, but it's true. In 1970, at the height of her fame, Janis fell in love with a young adventure seeker named Seth Morgan. The two got engaged that summer, and Janis even talked about marriage plans with close friends. She was 27, rich and famous, not exactly the image of a bride-to-be, yet Janis was excited to tie the knot. She playfully called City Hall to ask about marriage licenses, eager to start a new chapter. Those who knew her say she was giddy like a schoolgirl about the engagement. Sadly, fate had other ideas. Just a few weeks later, Janis died suddenly of an overdose, never making it to the altar. The news shocked everyone. Janis Joplin, rock's wild child, had been ready to settle down. Number 11, she sang Happy Birthday to John Lennon after she was gone. Janis sent John Lennon a birthday song from beyond the grave. Eerie but true. In late September 1970, Janis received an unusual request from Yoko Ono to record a 30th birthday greeting for John Lennon. Never one to disappoint, Janis grabbed a guitar with her full tilt boogie band and taped a playful version of Happy Birthday. She actually sang the cowboy tune Happy Trails and a birthday message. She mailed the recording, expecting it to reach John in New York by October 9th, 1970. Here's the spooky part. Janis died on October 4th, just days after making that tape. John Lennon ended up receiving Janis's cheerful birthday message when she was already gone. Imagine John's surprise and heartbreak. He called it sobering to hear her voice posthumously wishing him well. Number 10. Her Woodstock performance was so off-key it got cut from the film. Janis Joplin's Woodstock set was a mess and didn't make it into the Woodstock movie. Surprisingly, yes, Janis did perform at Woodstock 1969, taking the stage in the early hours after a long wait. By then she was exhausted, and by her own admission, she'd been drinking Southern Comfort and shooting heroin during that 10-hour delay. The result? Janis's normally electrifying voice was rough and raspy that night. She poured her soul into songs like Work Me Lord and Piece of My Heart, but her band, the Cosmic Blues Band, was a bit out of sync, and her vocals sometimes cracked. How bad could it be? Well, when the famous Woodstock documentary film was released, not a single one of Janis's songs was included. That's right, even though she was one of the biggest stars there, her entire performance got left on the cutting room floor. In later director's cuts, one song was added, but originally, moviegoers wouldn't have even known Janis Joplin was at Woodstock. It wasn't that she didn't give it her all, she absolutely did. Dancing and belting her heart out. But the truth is, Janis's Woodstock show was too raw and ragged for the polished film. Number 9. She got arrested for cursing out a cop on stage. Janis Joplin once got arrested mid-concert for swearing at police. It's the kind of rock star lore you'd expect to be exaggerated, but this one's completely true. November 1969, Tampa, Florida. Janis is on stage giving an energetic performance. The crowd is going wild, dancing in the aisles. The local police didn't like that chaos, so an officer with a bullhorn climbs on stage telling everyone to calm down and sit. Bad idea. Janis was not having it. She basically told the cop off in classic Joplin fashion, shouting something like, "Don't worry about it, man. If we don't do anything wrong, they can't say shit." The audience roared. The cop was furious. Janis finished the show with defiant flair, but as soon as she walked off stage, officers arrested her for vulgar and indecent language. Yes, Janis Joplin got booked simply for cussing out the authorities who interrupted her show. She spent a brief time in custody and later paid a $200 fine. Chump change for a rock star. However, the incident caused a stir. Some conservative venues blacklisted her, and even her hometown Houston banned her concerts for a while, citing her attitude in general. Did Janis regret it? Not visibly. She felt fans deserved a great show without meddling, and she stood up for them. Number 8. She recorded Mercedes-Benz in one take as a joke. Janis Joplin's final hit, Mercedes-Benz, was just a one-take goof she did in the studio. Amazingly, yes. In October 1970, Janis was in Los Angeles wrapping up her album Pearl. During one session, the band's equipment had a technical glitch causing a delay. To kill time and lighten the mood, Janis cracked a joke, "Hey, have y'all heard my new hit?" Then spontaneously, she launched into an a cappella blues tune she'd been fooling around with, Mercedes-Benz. Clapping her hands for rhythm, she belted out out the now famous lines, "Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes-Benz," completely off the cuff. The studio producer had the presence of mind to hit record on a little 2-track machine, capturing the whole thing in one raw take. Janis's raspy voice, the playful lyrics, and her cackling laugh at the end, followed by a cheeky "that's it." There were no fancy instruments, no second tries. Tragically, it turned out to be the last song she ever recorded. Janis died just 3 days later. When assembling the posthumous Pearl album, the producer decided to include that impromptu Mercedes-Benz recording exactly as it was, complete with Janis's infectious laughter. The song became legendary for its authenticity. Number 7. Southern Comfort gave her a fur coat for free. Janis's favorite whiskey company thanked her with a full-length fur coat. This one sounds like a drunken tall tale, but it really happened. If you know anything about Janis, you know she loved her Southern Comfort. The sweet whiskey liqueur was practically her onstage sidekick. She swigged from SoCo bottles in interviews and concerts, giving the brand tons of free publicity. In the late 1960s, a bottle of Southern Comfort and Janis Joplin went together like rock and roll. The company noticed their sales bump every time Janis name-dropped their drink. So how do you thank a rock goddess in 1969? With a glamorous lynx fur coat and matching hat, of course. According to friends, Janis one day received a luxurious fur coat, the kind of bold, flamboyant coat she'd adore, courtesy of the Southern Comfort Company as a thank you for being their unofficial ambassador. She was delighted. You can spot photos of Janis proudly wearing that fur coat, bottle of SoCo in hand, a huge grin on her face. Some accounts say Janis herself half-jokingly suggested they owe her a gift for all the free advertising, and the company obliged. Number 6. She paid for her own funeral party. Janis Joplin left money in her will for an epic party after her death. Believe it or not, true. Janis always did have a dark sense of humor and a love for a good time. In September 1970, just days before she died, Janis updated her will. In it, she included one very Janis request. She set aside $2,500, a hefty sum then, to throw a big all-night wake for her friends in the event of her death. No quiet memorial for her. Janis wanted a raucous celebration, and she got it. A few weeks after her passing, on October 26, 1970, approximately 200 of her closest friends received invitations that read, "Drinks are on Pearl." Pearl was Janis's nickname. The party was held at the Lion's Share in San Anselmo, California, a venue she used to rock with her music. What was the mood? Exactly as she ordered. Not somber at all. By all accounts, everyone got as drunk and high as possible, musicians jammed, members of the Grateful Dead even played in her honor, and people celebrated Janis's life with laughter and tears. One friend toasted, "Here's to what's her name," and others joked around. Nobody sat in a corner weeping. It was one last wild night courtesy of Janis. Number 5. She bought a tombstone for her idol, blues legend Bessie Smith. Janis Joplin paid for Bessie Smith's long unmarked grave to finally get a headstone. It's an unexpected, touching story, and absolutely true. Janis's soulful singing was inspired by the great Bessie Smith, the Empress of the Blues, who died back in 1937. Bessie was a huge influence on Janis's style and passion, yet Bessie's family never placed a marker on her grave due to various issues. For over 30 years, Bessie Smith lay in an unmarked grave in Philadelphia. Fast forward to 1970. Janis learns about this injustice and is determined to make it right. In August 1970, just 2 months before her own death, Janis teamed up with a woman named Juanita Green, who had known Bessie in her youth, to finally honor Bessie. Together, they paid for a proper tombstone for Bessie Smith, engraving it with the epitaph Janis helped choose. "The greatest blues singer in the world will never stop singing." On August 7th, 1970, the headstone was laid at Bessie's resting place, thanks in large part to Janis's generosity. It's a beautiful truth that the rock star who once idolized blues legends ended up memorializing her hero for eternity. Number 4. She literally knocked out Jim Morrison with a bottle. Janis Joplin smashed a liquor bottle over Jim Morrison's head in a fight. It sounds like pure rock and roll gossip. Two 60s icons in a drunken brawl. But this one is very true and very wild. The story goes that Doors frontman Jim Morrison was notorious for his outrageous, often boorish, drunken behavior. A mutual friend, producer Paul Rothchild, invited Janis and Jim to the same party in LA, hoping the two free spirits would get along. Wrong. As the night wore on, a very drunk Jim Morrison started hitting on Janis, and not politely either. Janis, who had no time for creeps, tried to ignore him. Eventually, she'd had enough of Jim's unwanted advances and asked the host to drive her home. As Janis was getting into the car, Jim stumbled over and grabbed her by the hair, still pestering her. That was it. Janis swung her trusty bottle of Southern Comfort and whacked Morrison right on the head, knocking the Lizard King out cold on the pavement. Jim was left seeing stars, and likely nursing a lump on his skull. Incredibly, even after regaining consciousness, Morrison reportedly was infatuated. Instead of being angry, he wanted to hang out with Janis again. Maybe he thought her feistiness was great. But Janis told friends, "No way, never again with that guy." This bottle-smashing incident became rock legend, often retold by witnesses like Rothschild. And it didn't just happen once. Another tale from a New York club says Janis also clobbered Jim with a bottle during a wild jam session where he was acting up. Number 3. She showed up at her high school reunion in full rock star glory. Janis Joplin went back to her 10-year high school reunion to flaunt her fame, and it didn't go as planned. This one is as dramatic as it sounds, and it's true right down to Janis's sharp one-liners. Let's set the scene. 1969, Port Arthur, Texas. Janis's class from Thomas Jefferson High School is having its 10-year reunion. Teenage Janis had been bullied and ostracized in school. Classmates called her awful names like pig and worse. Now Janis was a world-famous rock star, and she decided to return home with a vengeance. She told friends she was going to show those hometown folks what became of the weird girl they once teased. So Janis arrived at the reunion dressed to the nines, flamboyant attire, big smile, likely a drink in hand, ready to be the superstar of the night. And indeed, many ex-classmates were stunned. Some greeted her politely, others sheepishly asked for autographs. Janis, never one to bite her tongue, openly admitted to a reporter that she attended the reunion just to rub her success in their faces. She famously said her goal was to see all those kids who are still working in gas stations and driving dry cleaning trucks while I'm making $50,000 a night. Ouch. Throughout the event, Janis played the part of the triumphant celebrity, but deep down she hoped for some validation or apology that never really came. After the reunion, she called her publicist and voiced her disappointment. In a wistful, maybe slightly sad tone, Janis said, "Well, I guess you can't go home again, right?" That quote speaks volumes. Despite the mythic idea of Janis getting revenge, the truth is more poignant. She confronted her past and realized those old wounds hadn't healed. It turned out to be an empty victory. Number 2. She was voted ugliest man on campus in college. Janis Joplin was once voted the ugliest man on campus at her university. It sounds too cruel to be real. How could someone as vibrant and iconic as Janis carry such an awful title? Yet this myth is unfortunately true, and it was a defining moment in her early life. In 1962, Janis was a student at the University of Texas at Austin. She was an artsy, beatnik type girl in a conservative Southern college. She went barefoot, wore blue jeans, and sang folk songs on her auto harp. Needless to say, she didn't fit in with the sorority queens and football heroes. That year, a frat house held a satirical charity contest called Ugliest Man on Campus. Male students competed as jokes, but in a nasty twist, some frat boys decided to nominate Janis, a woman, as a write-in candidate. It was an incredibly vicious prank. When Janis found out her name was put forward as the ugliest man, she was humiliated and heartbroken. For the record, she didn't win, some guy won, but just being nominated publicly was devastating. Janis later wrote an anguished letter to her family describing how awful it felt to be mocked by her peers. That cruel incident lit a fire in Janis. Within a week, she packed her bags, dropped out of college, and said goodbye to Texas. She hitchhiked to San Francisco, determined to find a place she belonged, the nascent hippie music scene. In a way, being named ugliest man on campus was the spark that launched Janis Joplin's journey to rock stardom. It was painful motivation that pushed her to prove her worth. And boy, did she ever. She transformed into the bold, bewitching rock goddess we know, enchanting audiences who likely included a few of those frat boys eating their hearts out. Number 1. She lived a live fast, die young philosophy to the letter. Janis Joplin said she'd rather live a short, intense life than a long, boring one. And that's exactly what happened. This one is hauntingly true. Janis was known for for her all-or-nothing approach to life. She famously quipped, "I'd rather have 10 years of super hyper most intense life than live to be 70 and boring." It was a bold statement from a 20-something rebel, dismissing the idea of growing old. Janis indeed lived with her foot on the gas pedal, an electrifying whirlwind of music, passion, and excess. She squeezed those 10 years into the 1960s, touring relentlessly, screaming lyrics from her soul, partying hard, and bearing her emotions for the world. Sadly, her words proved prophetic. Janis died at 27 years old, not even close to 70, after a rapid rise and a tragic fall. In her brief time, though, she achieved more raw impact than most people could in a full lifetime. Her records topped charts, her performances left audiences in tears and awe, and her style broke barriers for women in rock. It's almost as if Janis made a deal with fate. Burn bright, burn brief. The myth encapsulates her legend. She truly did live fast and die young. Of course, we wish she had more time, but Janis herself might have shrugged and said that's the price of being Pearl, the supernova of her era.